Welcome to Nuanced Beauty. This podcast is intended to be a spot where my husband Bill and I will capture some complex thoughts and challenge us to hold to our opinions loosely so that we can see the beauty in others and the beauty in ourselves. I want to challenge us to dive deeper into those everyday topics and those sticky topics that we might shy away from, or we might bulldoze over others with our opinions. Because I think there's wisdom in this idea that if we all thought exactly the same, there would be no need for anyone else. So let's have a conversation and let's get nuanced.
Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Nuanced Beauty.
Hi guys.
Hey. So we're going to take this a little different and beg for your help by interacting with our Instagram page at nuance_beauty is our Instagram page. But something that we're in the current stages of figuring out is how we're going to manage screen time with our kids.
Yeah, we are in the thick of it with our 6-year-old and our not even 2-year-old.
Oh, and well, that's the thing. Is how do we do it with kids and kids even that young, and what the recommendations are, and what we thought beforehand. I don't know about you, but I was pretty like, they don't need screens. I had all these convictions.
Right. So our like main question for today is, how do you handle screen time with your kids? And we thought like the first component is what you think about screens before you have children and what you think about screens after you have children, and how life can be kind of hard and they can become a crutch at times. I mean, I can think back to before Zeke was able to walk. Zeke didn't walk until 17 months. He had this nice little jumperoo station and he loved Octonauts. Absolutely loved Octonauts. So we could leave him watching about 2 episodes of Octonauts and he would bounce away with the Creature Report song. And it was like 45 minutes of getting stuff done.
Yeah, he was a very clingy baby, so that was the only time we ever really could set him down.
Yeah.
Which is where all of those convictions went.
Because pre-kids, I think we had good intentions. I don't know if I had any particular like ideas of like, oh, we're gonna limit it to this amount or this amount, whatever. I don't think I had any of that.
We had numbers on it, but I think we had a direction of I shouldn't speak for you. I had an idea of what I thought parenting would be, and it wasn't that.
Yes.
It was way harder.
Yes, it just keeps rolling.
And then so Zeke started watching Octonauts really young, and I was actually really relieved when Aaron was the same age. He actually wasn't super interested, so we made him interested because we needed that kid to leave us alone too.
Yeah. Actually, it was kind of interesting between kid 1 and kid 2. Aaron did not care to watch a screen at all. We did not get him to really pay attention to screens until maybe 1 to 2 months ago. They just did not keep his attention at all. And Aaron has been on a Sing 2 movie kick. We've probably watched it a couple dozen times in the past 2 months. And
of all the movies we could have gotten him hooked on.
Of all the movies, he does like Taylor Swift Reputation, like that Netflix. He likes Aaron likes musical things. Like he will dance to music. So those are kind of anecdotal, right?
Oh, super anecdotal. But what we're facing now and what we're kind of getting into is how do we manage the kids as they get older and they're making decisions and they're throwing tantrums and things. And Zeke is he has a streak of the obsessive about him. When he gets interested in something, he gets
Passion.
very interested. He
Yes.
wants to do that thing. He wants to talk about that
Full
thing.
throttle.
It's like, oh, he's not playing this video game right now. He's going to talk about it because that's how he gets his fix. You know.
Yes, he is.
Let's talk about Zelda.
He can be consumed by something.
Mm-hmm.
And that is where, so for the past, I'd say year, we tried a technique of like limiting him to 1 hour a day. And then we took away weekdays. Like it
Yeah.
started
Well, and
where we did 1 hour.
I think we kind of leaned in that direction because if you read the parenting books,
Hmm.
they speak about it in terms of hours per day. So we
Yeah.
approached it in terms of hours per day, or even
Yes.
an hour a day.
Yeah.
Uh,
And we tried the hour a day, and then we were starting to just get attitude. It felt like a lot more behavioral stuff. And he's in kindergarten, so maybe it's the kindergarten too. Like there are so many things going on. But
but
it
he's old
seemed,
enough that he has a sense of time,
yeah.
and his big meltdowns were, if I'm done playing, that means I don't get to play again for a whole day or a whole 7 days.
Okay, so then that's the next component is we did an hour a day and then we had behavioral stuff. So then we kicked it to only Friday, Saturday, Sunday.
Mm-hmm.
And then the Friday, Saturday, Sunday, like limiting it to that level caused huge emotional uproars in our house because he was so like, oh my gosh, it's Sunday and I'm done with my hour and I don't get to play until next Friday. And so it became such a fixation, like more so than it was before. And so we kind of felt this nudge that, like, okay, this whole like limiting time or focused on the time on the clock, it felt like it worked for a little while. We had a timer and it seemed like it was going okay. And now he's growing. And as you
Mm-hmm.
said, he's getting like the concept
Well,
of time.
this is going to sound really out of left field. I'm going to apologize to everyone's ears for a second, but what happens is what uh, Ram Dass refers to as the horny celibate, where when you force an asceticism like this, when you force a restriction,
Celibacy.
in that case,
Mm,
yeah,
yeah.
the horny celibate's a funnier way of thinking about it than the
Uh-huh.
kid who just can't put his video game down.
Yeah.
But the point is that when
You create
you
something.
create a fixation on the thing,
Yes.
you become, and this is far afield, but I'm going to go there anyway. You you begin to create your identity around your addiction,
Yeah.
because that's, so he would realize he couldn't play for a week, and that became the singular point of fixation.
Hmm.
Not even not the game or the lack of the game, the loss, that sense of loss became consuming
Yeah.
because we had made such a big line in the sand about it. So we started to ask, what do we want out of this? Like what do we want to teach him here?
Hmm.
Do we want to teach him to limit himself to a certain number of hours a day? Maybe. I don't know if there's a an
Hard and
app.
fast there.
Yeah,
That
because
is useful. Yeah.
right, that's useful. What I think we landed on for now, and we're going to
Hmm.
change our mind again, I'm sure.
Next week. No.
Sure. Well, let's give him a little time before we jerk him around again, please.
Yeah, no, we won't.
Um,
We'll save
we
it
want him to develop the skill in which he can play, but then
and
also do
break
something else.
away. The
Yeah.
ability to break away and do other things besides just look at a screen.
Hmm.
So we do still have a time constraint. We are not doing screens on weeknights because
I let him
in
go on Wednesdays because it's an early release day.
okay, early release on Wednesday, so he gets some time. But in general, like weeknights are limited to none.
Because here was the thing: when he had an hour a day, he felt entitled to that hour.
Yes.
And then when we didn't have time during the week,
Like if we needed to run an errand or if his friends wanted to play outside, or something, it would be like, oh, well, I don't want to break away to that because I want to get my screen time in.
mhm,
And then it's approaching bedtime or shower that night if needed. And so that was just not,
mhm,
that just wasn't going well either. So weeknights don't have enough time. So for the most part, screens stay on the weekend. But what
mhm.
we have tried to tell him recently was, we want you to be comfortable that when we say, okay, it's time to go to the store, you say, okay, mom. And then you put the Nintendo Switch away or you turn off the TV and you break away.
He started to get really litigious about it, and I said, maybe the thing I'm most proud of ever saying as a parent. He said, but So you have to put it away, with alacrity. You have to put it away when we say to. And he started, okay, well, how long, how far can I push? He's asking me the question, how actually far can I push this until I get punished for this? And I said, do you trust me to be fair? There's a long pause, and he said, yeah. And I said, I will be fair to you in this. And that, because he is a very litigious child, if I'm engaging him on those grounds, I'm going to lose because I
Yeah.
am not a litigious person.
Yeah.
I kind of go with my
He
gut
is
on
so
everything.
calculated. Yeah.
So I asked him, do you trust me to be fair? And that allowed him to kind of put his trust into me
Mhm.
to regulate this in some way.
Yeah.
And for the most part, I think it's going okay.
Yeah, I think it has been decent. Like on the weekends, like
He plays a
we can
lot.
yeah, he is. He's getting a lot of time for the most part. Like we'll go into like what types and everything, but he like we can go swimming or we can go grocery store or we can go do various things like we went to the Y in the morning and all that, and he's not throwing these massive tantrums and going into this like super negative headspin. He is still like wants to talk about what he's doing.
And he does still get sad, but he seems to be able to pull himself through it.
Yeah, yeah, it's not as intense of a
Mhm.
withdrawal.
And
Yeah,
and he played. I didn't tell you this. He played 8 hours on Sunday.
of course he did.
8 hours,
Yeah.
which is unfortunate because I did like that he was playing outside with kids, but not all the kids are really that great for him to play with anyway. So whatever. Um, and that said, I grew up playing video games, like
Mhm.
intensely playing video games. I grew up in the middle of nowhere. I didn't have neighbor kids. I didn't have anybody.
Mhm.
So yeah, I played video games 8, 10, 12 hours a day all the time. So I'm not against the concept of video games by any
Mhm.
means. The problem is that he's playing maybe different games than I played. And
Right.
that's why I'm really grateful. The thing actually got him into video games is that before we were married, we had a Nintendo Wii. And at that time, you can download classic video games onto a Nintendo Wii and play it. So I played some N64 games, games like Zelda.
Mhm.
Um, and I still had those when she kind of came of age. So he would watch me play, and it was something we'd do together. It's kind of a cool thing that we do together. Um, but the games that are coming out now are different types of games.
Yeah, they're more interactive. A lot of them do have a component. Like so he
Online
Minecraft
components.
is a popular game right now and it has an interactive component if you set it up where you go into other people's worlds that they've created. And Zeke does have Minecraft, but it's just set up where he plays self-contained.
I'm pretty sure.
Yeah,
I'm
pretty
pretty
sure.
sure that's the thing.
Yeah.
Because I logged into I went into the menu and I understood some of it,
Yeah.
but not necessarily understanding all of it. And the games that I grew up playing were insular. It was a closed world game.
Yeah.
And so I was as we were thinking about this, I'm like, this reminds me of something I heard my parents, at least my parents' generation, say about drugs. They're like, my parents were hippies, man. I found a beaded headband in the back of a closet once, and my stepmom, my very waspish, like uptight stepmom, put it on and says, "Bill, I used to smoke marijuana cigarettes in this."
Marijuana cigarettes.
She said
I
that. It was great.
know.
She talked about how she had this pot plant on her back patio, and her mom saw it, and she convinced her that it was a tomato plant. 'Cause they do kind of look like that.
They do look similar.
They
Yeah.
do look like that.
Yeah.
So, but things they would say are things like, "Well, yeah, but it's not the same as it was when we were kids. The drugs weren't as strong back then."
Hmm.
And there's some truth to that. Like, man, weed cultivation is a whole next level of gardening. Um,
Yes. Uh,
so I
but
find
with
myself kind of saying the same thing.
video
Like in
games,
video games, like
yes.
they're they're they weren't as strong back then.
Yeah.
They
Well,
weren't
it's
as like the science behind it to
yes.
capture your brain
Yes.
to communicate with people all over the world wasn't there.
Right.
So now I'm scared of this thing he's doing
Yeah.
because I don't understand it. And I feel so old saying like I'm scared of what the kids are into these days.
Yeah.
And in some ways that should be a good thing. I want our children to grow and learn new things that we never understood.
Uh-huh.
That's how progression through generations works. But he's 6.
Yeah. He's 6.
So I'm really happy that he's still super into playing the N64 version of Zelda.
Yes.
and I play that with him all the time because it's nostalgic for me and it feels safe for him.
And I play Mario sometimes.
And you're rock at Mario 3. You're
Yeah.
way better than me at Mario.
Yeah, so I had my days of video games too. But that kind of like goes into the like what are they spending their screen time with, right? So Zeke has an iPad and he has Switch and we have Roku or whatever, streaming where we have Amazon Prime and Netflix. And the hard part with like what I think you were trying to draw out there is that when we played video games, you bought a single game,
Hmm.
you put it into a console, and you played.
Hmm.
And maybe late in high school is when we started to have like the car identity theft, whatever.
Oh,
Like,
Grand Theft Auto came out in middle school,
it,
but it still was a
was
singular
that?
disc. It was
It
not. It was not
was.
online.
So that didn't have an online
Yeah.
platform either.
Now the only thing I ever did
Yeah.
play online when I was younger was Age of Empires, and there was like games.com. You play chess or
Right.
Yahoo
Yahoo
Pool,
Pool. Yeah.
and
I
Yahoo
played a
Pool
lot of
was a
Yahoo Pool.
cesspit of like
Connecting and whatever, talking to
connecting.
people. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And so that's what part of why I think our hackles are up because we grew up in that space
Hmm.
a little bit, both of us.
But then there's like the next component of even like YouTube kids. So uh, it's hard because they're not just choosing to watch like an individual show. You click on one thing and then the way that the screen is set up, you just really are. You're like tempted to check this other thing, which checks this other thing, which
Links to the
checks this
next thing
other
and links to the
thing.
next thing.
So there's this continual like spiral of keeping your attention,
Hmm.
which goes into
And
like,
as a parent, you can't monitor that constant linking unless you're constantly watching it with them. And if you're watching it with them,
mhm.
it kind of defeats the purpose of giving them the screen. You give them the screen so that they'll leave you
So that they
alone.
have some time, like they get to check out a little bit, you get to do what you need to
I have
do.
stuff to do.
Yes. But
Uh,
it's just like and we're just talking like, YouTube there, or even like we have Amazon
well,
Prime.
let's keep with YouTube for a second because there's user generated content,
Hmm.
and YouTube does a pretty good job moderating YouTube Kids, but it's still just too much.
Yeah.
And there's just creepy. It just gets creepy in
And
there.
there is a component of like just advertising, right? Like
Hmm.
kid went down a rabbit hole with some kid buying the most expensive toys that are
Oh
available
yeah,
on the market,
and then he wants this one and
opening it
wants
up
that
and
one.
playing with it. So it's like an imagination
Well,
aspect. And then he got all sad because you couldn't actually, like, if you bought that toy, it wouldn't actually make someone disappear
and
or
that was the
whatever.
least of the problems. It's just you
Yeah.
don't know who these people are and what they're saying all the time and what they're slipping in without you realizing it.
Yeah.
It's sketchy. Now things that go through a major platform like Amazon or Disney, I had to go through a Disney rabbit hole.
uh,
Uh, at least have some sort of public scrutiny to
yeah.
them.
Yeah.
These
And
ones.
they're movies, so they're rated. Like,
Hmm.
yeah, there's the component there.
Yeah.
Um, and not even like, because I don't really like, we haven't even like ventured down the level of like getting a phone or a messaging component for his iPad or something. But like, I do remember the thought of giving your kid a cell phone is like dropping them off in the middle of a city. And I don't prescribe to that level of fear mongering,
Hmm.
but I think there's validity to like you are you're giving them access to anyone and everyone.
Everything.
Yeah. And there are good characters and there are bad characters, and you have a 6-year-old.
Hmm.
So it's like it's a tricky thing to consider what your
Yeah, I don't
choices
think we're
are.
anywhere near the phone conversation
Yeah.
uh, with him, but we are just trying to. Uh, it's it's a it's an object lesson in moderating something that is not evil,
Mhm.
but is not inherently good either. It just is a thing that is.
Yeah, and
Um,
the algorithms are a thing. Like,
yeah.
if anyone tuned into any of the random TikTok bloody blah interviews with
Oh man,
Congress and Senate, which is terrible, it shows how out of touch old people are with young people.
as they talk to the
Oh, it's
so-called
so bad,
journalists,
so bad.
so
But
bad.
there is an interesting component, like that in China, every 30 minutes, their thing drops off. Like they have to
Mm-hmm.
take a break, they have to step away, and every 6 minutes, I think it's every 6 minutes, there's an educational
What I'm
video.
hearing from you is that we should be more like
We should be
China.
more
Is that what you're telling me
I
right
know,
now?
right? No, I'm just saying it's interesting how the component that we're talking about with we have the ability to fall into really bad habits
Mm-hmm.
with screens. Period. Every single person has the ability to create really bad habits, and that's where I think I like podcasts because it doesn't have the ability to catch your attention the same way. Like
Yeah, the format's too long for it to link to something else,
yeah,
and because it's an audio format, um,
it's just different. It's
yeah.
so
Well,
different.
the short format videos like TikTok and Reels and YouTube Shorts to a lesser extent, they're just so
Short,
sophisticated.
yeah, short
They're very
attention
bite span.
span.
They're,
They
our pastor made a point a few weeks ago about the 5 minutes more syndrome. About you keep thinking to yourself, well, let's do whatever it is for 5 minutes more, and then 5 minutes more, and then 5 minutes more. And next thing you know, the whole day's passed.
mhm.
When and when you watch a reel or a TikTok, it's like 7 seconds. That was Vine. I don't know if there's a time limit on reels.
Uh-huh.
Uh, so you could always just do one more. You always have time for just one more.
Uh-huh.
You don't have time for just one more podcast. Podcasts can get super long.
Yeah, you
It's
actually
different.
have to like choose to yeah, or I mean, whatever.
I
Yeah.
remember when we were sailing and we'd have, back in those days, you'd have hard drives full of movies and TV shows.
Yes.
I would watch 10, 20-minute TV shows, but I would not watch a 90-minute movie because of the
Mhm.
commitment.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny how that works. Like you kind of yeah, you think I can just keep going and
So it's very sophisticated and it's very scientific. And if you want to learn more about that, I'd recommend the Netflix documentary,
social
The
dilemma.
Social Dilemma. Thank you.
Yeah, that was interesting. That
Hmm.
kind of got into that. But then
It also gets into the dangers of radical centrism. It did a
yeah,
great job not making fun of either side, making fun of both sides,
both
but
sides.
being
Yes.
radically centrist
Yeah.
as an example.
But I think like the last part that we could kind of spend a minute or two on is like what are we saying versus what are we doing? Like how are we modeling? And I think you shared one day you're like asking Zeke to put the screen down while you're looking at your phone.
I'm laying on the couch. We have a couch in our bedroom because our bedroom is ludicrously big. And Z comes in to ask if he could play Switch, and I'm on my phone laying on the couch saying, "No, you've had too much screen time today." It's
It's
ridiculous, and I
funny.
can make excuses like, "Oh, I'm working 24 hours a day, and this phone is my portal to work," but I'm not working. I'm scrolling through Instagram. I mean,
Yeah, yeah.
um,
But there is like so that's like, that's a negative. But then I would say that we do like for us, we have one TV in the house, and it's in the TV room. And we each have a phone, and Zeke has an iPad, and we have a tablet that's not used as much. And
yeah,
there's a
that makes
Nintendo
sense too.
Switch, and we have a couple computers, but we're not really on computers besides podcast recording and budgeting stuff or such, like not that much. But like just because we have one TV doesn't mean we don't get our share of screen time. That said, I do like to think that we are intentionally like modeling not just sitting in front of a TV. Like we don't sit in front of a TV. We don't watch a lot of TV, and this isn't totally bashing on TV. It's just we we're not always
Mhm.
captured by our screens.
Yeah, and that's
I regularly place my phone somewhere and have no idea where it is for 3
it's the
hours.
worst because she won't respond to my text, and then I'll think she's dead. You don't have any idea how many times I have planned my life of widowerhood because she hadn't texted me back in like three
For like
hours,
3
and
hours
I
because I
just
was
assume that she's
not
dead
looking at a phone.
because
Yeah.
that's clearly the only possible outcome of her not texting me back is that she is dead.
Yes. I know.
That's it. I'll rock widowerhood. Just
Yeah, right.
okay. We were way over time. We could talk a lot more about
That's okay, but you have any
television
other thoughts
culture.
about it?
No.
What are we modeling?
I mean, we're I don't want to say it because it's terrible. I don't think we're modeling very well. I think I'm on this phone a lot. I mean, and I think that I'm very intentional about not being who my parents were, which the whole house was centered around that TV in concentric circles. The TV was in the middle, and then there was a row of the couches and other chairs, and then the kitchen was all centered
Mhm.
around the TV. The TV turned on first thing in the morning, and it was on until everyone went to bed at night. It was constant orbit around that TV.
Mhm.
Um, And I didn't want that.
Yeah.
And so we aren't doing that. Instead, we all have our little orbits around our little screens. Is it better? I don't actually know.
Yeah.
We'll find out when Zeke goes to therapy and tells us about it.
Yeah. Yeah. Valid.
So,
well, with that,
with
yeah.
that, engage with our Instagram account and tell us how you figured this out, because we obviously don't know what we're doing, but you
Yeah.
guys might. So please, please, please tell us how to be better parents. Until next time.
Bye, guys.
All right, this is the part of the podcast where we recommend a book for this week.
Yes, and as a reminder, the intent is not necessarily to make this a book club or that you read every single book we suggest every week.
No, that'd be entirely too many books. All this is just coming from the fact that a lot of the conversations we've had and the conversations that we've wanted to share have come from books that we've read and topics that we enjoy. So with all the books out there, sometimes it's hard to choose what you like. So this is our contribution.
Yeah, and we generally hope that it ties in a little bit with the episode.
All right, for this week's book recommendation, our intention with this segment was to be books that we've read, but although I haven't finished this book, it's on the vaunted list of books that I've started and never finished. I could not think of a better book to recommend for this episode than The Tech-Wise Family by Andy Crouch. It's a short read, which makes it even more embarrassing that I couldn't finish it, but it's incorporating the concept of wisdom around the use of technology in your family. It's not as much thous and thou shalts. It's exhorts you to think about what you're doing, and it also incorporates this idea of fasting, which I found really interesting. Because fasting isn't something we do in our culture a whole lot in any sense of the word, unless it's in a kind of more bro science sort of way. But it talks about taking one day of the week without technology and one week of the year without technology, which is something that I find very attractive, but also don't know how I would because I am on call for work. So that's my excuse. What's yours? Hit us up on at @nuanced_beauty on Instagram and tell me your excuse, because I'm really interested in it. But in the meantime, check out The Tech-Wise Family by Andy Crouch. I don't think you'll regret it. All right, see you next time.
Thanks for listening to today's episode. If you aren't already following us, please follow us on your Spotify or Apple Podcast account. And look us up on Instagram at nuance_beauty. Until next week.